Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Casual Watch Talk Live. This is our third episode, and I'm joined by some special guests today. I would love it if you could comment in the comment section if you've got any questions. But first, I'm going to introduce our guest for today. So, first off, I've got Dave from Detroit Mint. Hi, Dave.
Everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to Detroit.
Welcome to, yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for joining us, Dave. And if anybody's got any questions, I'm going to talk a bit about Dave's new watch because I've just been reviewing it today. But if anybody's got any questions microbrand related, then definitely put those in the comment section. And then my second guest, we're going to have a few joining, but my second guest is Lee, who's a member of our Facebook group. So I'll just add Lee in. Lee, thanks for joining us.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
So we've got people trickling in now. So thanks to all four of you that are currently watching. And as everyone trickles in, thank you once again. Well, should we kick this off with, let's do a soft open. Should we talk about what watches we're wearing? Do you want to do a quick wrist check? Do you want to kick us off, Lee? What are you wearing?
Sure thing. I have Datejust 41 on.
Yeah, I love that watch. I need to... I need a Datejust in my life. My OP is stored safely away, but I think that grey dial.
Yeah, it's my favorite watch right now. Can't get enough of it. Just been wearing it every day.
Is that a white dial or a meteorite dial?
It is a white, yeah. White dial, smooth bezel with the oyster bracelet. So I wanted something sporty, something I could use every day.
Nice.
And how do you find it as an everyday watch? Because you do a very labor-intensive job, don't you? You're not a desk worker.
I am, yeah. I love it for every day. I haven't worn it at work. I've been using the Explorer at work. My Explorer 2, which is my everyday work watch, but I wear the Datejust for everything else. Right. And I was actually at the pool today with my kids, and it was great. It is everything I need.
Do you get many people asking you about it? I'm interested.
I have had a few people ask me when I'm out with my kids or when I'm just, running around in my own yard, picking up sticks after the storm we just had come through. People are a little surprised that I wear it as much as I do, but I love it. I mean, I get the watches I do specifically to wear.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, Dave, what have you got on today?
Well, I was just getting off the boat, so I was wearing something pretty durable. So I have the Afield, which is another one of our new watches. This is a polished bezel, turtle case, sapphire crystal with a fitted Daytona band, which is odd on a turtle type case. But we actually machined the end links to perfectly fit onto a turtle case. So, it's one I've been playing around with for a while. I decided to go ahead and make a limited number of them. So I had those. And then, of course, I always have a vintage watch somewhere nearby. And I was wearing this one around today. So it's actually I don't know if you can see it. It's a Sheffield 2-dial chronograph from probably around 1970. And it actually has a Venus movement in it, which later became the Seagull movement, which is the reason why I have this, is to play around with a original Venus movement.
Right. Wow. I'd never heard of that brand, Sheffield, but I know the place in England well.
Yeah. So Sheffield's made a lot of. You would always see them make sort of homage watches in around 1970, and for about 5 years, you would get skin divers, rally watches, and this one being a chronograph with a Venus movement. It doesn't have a like a Valjean movement or anything like that, but it's still, I mean, it's a mechanical chronograph from the vintage that I was trying to replicate with my watch. So that's kind of the reason why I got it.
Cool. And we've got another guest as well. Stephen's going to join us. Hey, Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
We were just doing our wristwatch check. So you've come in right at the good time. What are you wearing today?
Today, I have on my Zenith El Primero 38 millimeter. This is the
nice.
one that was recently discontinued. I guess maybe 6 months ago, something like that. And yeah, it's an awesome watch. I heard a little bit about what Dave was saying, and even though it's a modern chronograph, I mean, it very much feels like a vintage chronograph, and I think that really appealed to me a lot because a lot of what I collect is vintage. So I definitely like modern pieces that have a vintage feel to them as well. So that really appealed to me with this watch.
Oh, cool. Well, I suppose I'll round this out. I'm wearing the Christopher Ward again, and also I need to point out before there's any. I'm sure I'm going to get comments about this. I haven't been in a fight. It looks like I've been in a fight, but I haven't. I know I look rough, but I got like a cold sore in the week, and then I tried to grow the beard a little bit just to mask it. But yeah, it's not I've not been fighting somebody over homage watches or a Steinhardt or anything. It's been.
I thought somebody sent you a Shinola or something, and
well, yeah, gave me a Shinola in the face. No, it would at least it was a it would have been embarrassing if I fell over, but yeah, so it's cold, so I thought it was going to go. But anyway, enough about casual medical talk. Well, Dave, let's kick this off actually, because I'm hoping that this will generate some questions. I'm just going to add this to the stream, but I've just been reviewing your new Cobra watches. These are your bicompacts with the Seagull movement in them.
Correct.
And we talked a bit about this last time, but I just want you to kind of talk through like the inspiration for this watch. And if anybody's got any questions for Dave, like about micro brands or about these watches in particular, then let us know.
Yeah. So it started with the, I was watching the movie Ford versus Ferrari. I get a lot of my inspiration from famous watches from movies. So I was watching that, and Matt Damon's character was wearing a Heuer, a vintage Heuer from around that. It was pretty period correct. Now, I believe that Carroll Shelby actually wore a gold Rolex Datejust in reality, but in that movie, they were all wearing racing chronographs, which were pretty standard, really tool watches for the guys to wear at the time. So the one in the movie was a Panda chronograph, and when I learned about it was Heuer was making one with a 1/100th of a minute chronograph hand, so that the guys could time their lap times in 1/100ths of a minute. And so I started looking for how many of those that's kind of a unique spin on the chronograph. So I started looking for them, and very few of them existed. There's the vintage Heuers, which are very hard to find, and I think Breitling made some as well. And so anyway, I went in and kind of tried to design that up myself. And we came up with this design to put it on the rehole, or instead of just a flat chapter ring, we actually put it up on the rehole. And the numbers are always in red. And then on the black version, it's a silver ring with the red on it. So, yeah. And so it was kind of inspired by Ford versus Ferrari, the movie, and the two main characters. One wore a white and black Panda. The other one wore a black chronograph. And then also I was reading in one of the books on famous vintage watches about Carroll Shelby and his promotions that he endlessly did, and he actually had Heuer make Shelby watches in the 60s for the release of the Shelby vehicles that went out only to the 500 dealers in the US that sold the Shelby vehicles.
Oh, wow.
And to my knowledge, there's only a handful of, they were like a promotional watch. These dealers got them, one of a bunch of things they've got. I don't think many of them kept them. So there's not a ton of them that are well documented right now. So I think that was a very cool watch. And it had more like a Shelby Cobra with the Shelby logo and everything at the 6 o'clock position. So I was like, oh, I could do a Cobra that looks like a D shape for the Detroit Mint version. So that was thus the Cobra, thus the 2-dial chronograph.
Oh well, I didn't know that about Hoyer, that they made those Shelby watches. But I suppose it makes sense because Steve, we talked about this, didn't we? About the Sears and Roebuck's Hoyers, the Traditions
Mhm.
ones, and then
Right.
they made that Abercrombie and Fitch one as well, didn't they? Was that Hoyer?
I don't know if they made it for him, but back then things were a lot different. Hoyer, you think about it, put your mindset back into the 1950s and 60s. These were tools. These were timekeeping tools, and a lot of what they were selling were for professional purposes. And
Right.
they were thinking more quantity over quality, whereas now it's kind of more of a luxury timepiece. This was a true professionals tool, and they didn't care who they sold it to. If we can pump out 500 of these with a promotional link to them, and someone will pay us X number of dollars to do it, we'll do it. They were not opposed to using different brands or marks to sell their products. So yeah, I mean, it's just a different time, and so yeah, I'm not at all surprised to hear that story that Dave mentioned. And in fact, I think I've seen a picture of one or two of those watches before. They are extremely rare, but you see a lot of co-branded Hoyers out there, and generic models. I think Lejour, in fact, sold generic Hoyers in the 1970s. So, it's just a different time.
Yeah, do you know what? I wonder if I think. Let me just. I might have actually found one on here. Sorry, Dave. I know we were talking about your watches here, but we've gone off on a bit of a tangent. But
There you
here's
go.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Which is that
Wow.
that same model that Hodinkee recently reissued as well,
Yeah.
with that
That's
unusual
very close.
date marker in the 9 o'clock window, and I guess it's a 30-minute counter. Very unusual design. I would imagine these are outrageously expensive just because it's a very rare design already, and then it's got that connection with Shelby.
Right.
It's got to be extremely rare.
And I believe
Well-
that one that's shown there in that image, you see it doesn't have, I don't know if you can zoom in on the image at all, but it doesn't have a tachymeter, right?
Hmm.
It has a 1/100th of a minute chronograph track.
Yeah,
around
and
the
it's a
outside.
45-minute counter too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Again, I think that has to do with endurance racing lap timing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dave, on your one, yours, and I've just been reviewing mine, but how difficult was it to get the 1/100th of a minute? Because it doesn't exactly line up with the markers itself. Was there quite a design challenge to get it to line up properly or to be like aesthetically pleasing? Because you did a great job of it. I mentioned it in my review, but like you say, it's unusual to see that 1/100th of a
Right.
yeah.
So what I was trying to do was get it close. So as it's tracking, you can't do that with a quartz. You can't do it with anything that's making a larger tick. But with the seagull movement, the Venus seagull movement, it has enough beats or ticks per second that it's slowly creeping around, and you can really see, if you stop it, it's going to stop pretty close to one of those 100ths. And then you can go from there, and then you've got a subdial, racing around as well. So
Yeah. We've actually got our first question for you, Dave. There seems to be some confusion on the Venus/Seagull movement to include the Seagull store in Alibaba, where they claim to use ST21, not ST19. What are your thoughts?
The ST21 is a 3-dial version of the ST19. So instead of 2 subdials, it has 3, and it looks more like, I think if you saw an Alpha Paul Newman, which is like a homage to the Paul Newman chronograph, it would be a mechanical 3-dial chronograph, which is an ST21. The ST19 is a 2-dial with no date.
And does the ST21 have any other improvement? Any other differences like hacking or?
It's not... get the ST21 with there's a couple of options for it. You can get it with the swan neck regulator that I used on mine. And there is now a ST21 automatic.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, which is really going to because it'll be available to micro brands, it will be something that a micro brand owner can get a automatic chronograph 3-dial for a reasonable price. Reasonable being, just over $100 per movement. So if you buy 500 movements at a time or whatever, but so yeah, they're doing some nice stuff for the micro brand industry.
And you mentioned when we did our interview, but probably a nice leading question from that one is that there's multiple companies that are making clones of the ST19, aren't there? It isn't just Seagull.
No, and the Seagull, it was the Red Army chronograph, right?
Yeah.
So that design is actually owned by the People's Republic of China and the Red Army. Therefore, anyone who is a member of the party could theoretically make that watch. I mean, the design is not owned by Seagull, I don't think.
Right.
So I don't think anyone in China is going to oppose a lot of people trying to make a similar watch to that, because I think it's kind of public property.
Like ubiquitous, yeah. Okay.
It's like their general, what is it? The general original Chinese mechanical watch is a very generic first mechanical watch that they made in the 1950s. And it's just a generic watch, but they're going to be remaking those, or they are remaking them now.
I think somebody asked me to review one of these. It's got like 3 stars on it. It's just a 3-hander, sort of goldish color.
Yep. It's really basic watch, but it's got a nice. If you get one with a nice Seagull movement in it, it's pretty nice for a regular manual mechanical watch.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Steve, have you had a experience with these Seagull movements?
Yeah. And I saw Todd saying hi in the comments. So I actually just had one of the, I guess, 1963 chronographs. This is actually my second time owning it. I actually sold it again, so I've sold it now twice. I've purchased 2, and I've sold both of them. And it's not because I had any sort of issue with them. In fact, I absolutely love them. I think they are an amazing value for the money. I mean, it's hard to imagine that you can get in 2021 a manual wind chronograph at the prices that these things sell for. So, I mean, I just think they're amazing. Again, I've never had any issues with them. They've always worked fine for me. But, I've also never owned them, I would say, more than a couple of years at a time. So, I don't have maybe the long-term track record that others have had. But from what I've heard, it's kind of hit or miss in terms of the quality, and it depends on, are you getting it from this company? Are you getting it from Alibaba? Is it from the company that's actually making the movements? Is it from a company that's, copying the movements and selling them somewhere else? So, there's a lot of these models out there, a lot of variations, and so it's really hard to understand, which batch is better than the others. But I think for someone like Dave, you have to have confidence that you're going to, be putting a good movement in your watches. And I think that if they weren't good, then people wouldn't be using them. So the fact that you still see a lot of companies using these movements really says a lot. It's probably the best option out there as far as a manual wind chronograph that's, relatively reasonably priced. And, it seems to be reasonably reliable as well. So, people are using them.
Yeah.
And
I go ahead and, I have mine regulated before they ship them. And then when I get them and finish the assembly or customization, I check the regulation and because mine has the swan neck regulator, I can tweak mine a little if I need to. But I never ship one that's off by more than, 6 or 7 seconds per day. I mean, they're always within 10 seconds a day regulation. And I think that's a big difference with like a micro brand. We can do that. We, I ship, tonight I have to build 2 of those, right? It's 2, right? I can build 2 and tune them and make sure they're perfect before they go out.
Mm-hmm.
A bigger brand really can't do that.
Right. And I think it's also important to know that, with these movements. This is not a brand new design, for the 21st century. This is 20th century technology.
Right. Here's one right here.
Right. I've got vintage chronographs, and they are just not meant to be chronometer spec. And I think you just kind of have to come into that as a buyer, with the assumption that this watch is probably not going to run exactly perfect all the time, but I'm okay with that because it's such a neat piece, and if it has a display back, I can see the movement in the back, and it's just such a fun piece to wear. So, I think as long as you come to with that mindset, I think, you'll be okay. But if you're expecting quartz perfection out of these watches, it's just not going to happen. It's not realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on. Lee, I'd love to ask you about this article that you were featured in.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, and this will probably a good topic for discussion, but the article you referenced on the Facebook group, and if anybody, please come on over and join our Facebook group. It's a thriving community, a lot of good chat on there as well. Definitely, if you're not a member already, then join up. We'd love to see you on there.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. Definitely come on over.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, do you want to take us through this article? So it was on Fratello's Watches, so on a very upmarket publication you were featured in here.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of being interviewed by the author of the article, and he included some of what I had to say about my collection. The article itself is about the nature of collecting and different collecting philosophies and people who like one brand or collecting every complication or certain vintages, lots of different options for how to look at a collection. And my use of the essentially 2-watch collection that I've been using this year of my Datejust and my Explorer was highlighted as an example of not quite a 1-watch collection, but close to a 1-watch collection.
Yeah, and then, what was the premise of the article? Was it just that there's different types of collectors, or was it that, that some people enjoy just having, collecting one particular type of watch, or what was the kind of premise of it?
Yeah, it was looking at kind of how different personalities go about different styles of collecting, and some people, for example, like having a lot of turnover and seeing a lot of new watches as they come out, and some people like holding on to something for a long time and really getting to know that one piece, and just how different people approach the hobby, and just kind of what it says about you as a person and how you look at the hobby, and how different folks find enjoyment in this interesting thing we do.
Yeah, it's like, anybody who's watched my channel for 5 minutes knows that I'm the one that the churn and sell. I like the new watches, and also with the ones that come in for review as well. It was funny, going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I just watched Adrian at Bark and Jack review. The video was something along the lines of why people dislike Hublot. And he made, it's a really interesting video, like plug to Adrian Bark and Jack, but he made an interesting comment about watch collectors, where he says the reason that watch collectors, and I'll see whether you guys agree with this, the reason why watch collectors don't necessarily like Hublot is because Hublot's made for people that want to flex their money, and that it's a brand that's predominantly bought by non-watch enthusiasts, because there's nothing like a horological significance. Can't say that. It's all to do the price. He said the price is a feature of the watch, not just the watch is the movement is the feature, or the hands. But what do you think of that? Do you think he's right there in terms of some of these like really high end luxury brands that are perhaps overlooked by watch collectors, like Hublot? Or
yeah, I think when you're looking at some of the brands like a Moser or an MB&F that are higher end, that don't get as much press coverage necessarily outside of the hobby. And then you look at something like a Hublot, which you can see all over celebrity culture. I know Hublot was a big sponsor in F1 for a long time. I think people are definitely buying the status of the Hublot more than they are the quality of the watch itself. Not that Hublot isn't an excellent quality watch, but I think it's like buying a Ferrari. If you don't know anything about cars, you still know Ferrari is a great car. If you don't know anything about watches, you know Rolex is good. You know Hublot is good.
Yeah.
You might not know Vacheron, but you probably know Hublot.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the ones he reviewed was a Big Bang chronograph that was £10,000, so let's say $14,000 or something, and it featured a ETA chronograph movement in there, which is a couple of $100. But he was saying that that would appall a watch collector that movement was being for a watch in $4,000 price range, then it's ideal, but for that price. And it was interesting because he was saying that that's an example of why people that buy Hublot, that the price is a feature, they're flexing the price. But I mean, Steve, I've never even seen a Hublot I've seen them in the window, but I've never held one. Have you ever seen one in person?
Never once.
Dave, have you ever seen one?
No. And, I guess to that point between the watch collector versus or a watch enthusiast, I would see somebody with like a Zenith, and I would say, most people wouldn't, the average Joe Blow at the diner may not know what that is, but any watch collector sees a guy with a Zenith on and goes, that guy knows what he's got.
Yeah.
That's a great watch for the
Thank you.
money.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I was actually just looking at their website and their new version of the El Primero, and I was like, oh, I may need one. But
oh yeah, God, I'm forgetting the name. Is it Chronosport?
Master.
Chronomaster.
Yes.
Oh, it's stunning. The more I have to stop looking at it because, and I think $10,000, which is a hell of a lot of money, but I know you shouldn't say it's like the Zenith Daytona, but as it's pitted up to the Daytona, I don't know. I mean, I know why you would pick a Daytona over that, but for the money, but pound for pound, it seems like the much better option in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
really
I think
nice.
it's a watch collector's, watch enthusiast's watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas, some of the other ones that we're talking about that are super expensive, but maybe not, they don't have a unique movement or they don't have the horological history. They're more trend setting. They're trendier watches right now, which is great. I mean, sometimes trendy watches become, the next Rolex. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
That makes me think of something like Bulgari with the Octo Finissimo, which, I mean, it's kind of on that edge of, is it fashion? Is it horology? I think they're amazing. I would love to have an Octo Finissimo in hand, but I know a lot of people consider them basically fashion watches.
Yeah, it's an that is a lesson in simplicity of design, isn't it? But creating something unique. I mean, it's I'd love to see one of those in person. I don't know. I don't know where I would get one. Whether they sell them through the Bulgari fashion stores. The ones that I've been in, they don't seem to have watches. But do a couple of shout outs. So Bobby, thanks for joining us, mate. Bobby is the member of the Facebook group who is lucky enough to own every single version of the Speedmaster Snoopy. Incredible. You'll have to come on, Bobby, one day and talk about it. We'd love to have you on.
Now that is a specific form of collecting, to the point that we were just talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I imagine it would be extremely hard if you to collect those Snoopy ones now, because some of them, I think there's people just chancing their arm on Chrono 24, isn't there? Because I've seen one of the versions, not the most recent one, but the previous version where they go for like $46,000 or something on Chrono 24. I don't know if that's somebody just chancing their arm there. But,
It could be, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, those ultra rare ones, I think, are they've just become so desirable that somebody that had the foresight to start snagging those, or that really loved the Snoopy version, let's say 5-10 years ago, you could have probably picked up a lot of the more vintage ones for a reasonable amount.
Well, and that's a good point about Omega, isn't it? Because if you would have had to have liked Snoopy to buy when the first one came out, you would have had to have liked Snoopy to buy it, because there were so many limited editions. You would have been shooting in the dark, wouldn't you, if you were trying to pick one that was going to be valuable later down the line. I mean, now we know Snoopy since the first or second one, but that very first one, you probably would have had to have been as equally a Snoopy fan because you could have just picked. I mean, you would think that Apollo one, where it had the medallion of the engraving of Apollo, but you hardly ever see anybody talking about those. But that was incredible at the time. Or that suitcase they did with all of the Apollo missions, like medallions on each one. You never hear anybody talking about that one. Or, I mean, they're just the countless ones.
Yeah, I mean, if you were a huge Bond fan, would you have gotten all of the Omega Bond versions? I never see those. They've been making the 007 version since what, the 90s? Or was it
since
even in the
GoldenEye,
80s?
was it?
Yeah, GoldenEye, right? So, but I don't see somebody that has. Oh, I've got every one of the Omega Bond versions. I've not heard of that targeted of a collection. I've heard of people that have every Bond watch. From the original, the Rolex to the the current Omega Seamaster and all of the digitals in the 70s, which are, as you know, I've got 2 of those.
Well, and that one-off Breitling that they made, that huge Breitling with the extra piece on that was like a depth gauge. I can't even remember what film that was in. Was it Thunderball or something, where he had that one-off custom?
I think it was
Breitling. Somebody here was saying that several years ago he was wearing a watch on an air flight and was mistaken for a Hublot. In reality, it was a $300 quartz. I honestly, it's because obviously we get kindly, I get kindly asked to review a lot of watches, and it's amazing how many micro brands have gone for that Hublot look. And I think it's a shame, actually, because I think there's maybe somebody that's making these aftermarket Hublot cases, but they're gravitating towards that Hublot look. In fact, I think I even might have replied to somebody saying it's a shame that you've kind of gone this route with it.
People want what they can't have, So, I definitely felt that way when I first started collecting. Going after homage watches, and I think that's a large part why the homage industry exists, is because people want that Rolex, and they can't afford it. So why not buy a Steinhardt? Why not buy something else that has that look and has that feel? If I can get it for less, that's great. Or maybe I want to get this watch at some point in the future, but I'm not sure if I want to truly own it. So, this is kind of like a training wheels, is to kind of get the homage version first to see if you really like it. Obviously, it's a little bit different with Hublot. Probably if you're buying one of those, you don't really even care about the price in the first place. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't blame people for wanting to buy that. There's always going to be that market out there for them.
Yeah, and we could do a whole other one on homage watches, because my kind of view on it. But I think that even buying a homage of a certain watch, because there's certainly a Rolex, because there's no real comparison in quality between the I mean, they're worlds apart, isn't there? There's not like a narrow gap between a Steinhardt and a Rolex. There's a whole. I mean, people will argue that there's not, but there's definitely a hole. So whether it would put you off saving for the real thing, because that was the argument when people used to pirate music, wasn't it? It's like, I'm just trying the album out just to see if I like it, and then Metallica are like, no, buy our music. Deservedly so. Well, guys, keep the questions coming in, but we had an interesting one on the Facebook group the other day, and I'm going to let me find who actually asked it, but it was, is there a watch? Oh yeah, it was Richard. You know who you are on the Facebook group. It was. Is there a watch in your collection that you don't often wear, but when you go back to it, or when you discover it, or when you look at it, you really like it again, and you're like, oh my, I'm glad that I bought this. I'll kick this off. Mine is definitely my Seiko Turtle. Like, I don't wear it all the time, and it's kind of stored away in a box. But when I pick it up and I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's a really good watch. But I must like forget each time. I suppose it's like when I watch, you know, like I guess a Star Wars film or something, and you've even though you've watched it 100 times, you still forget. And you're like, oh my God, this is a good film. But mine's like the Turtle. I always go back to it. That's why I probably would never sell this, because every time I go back to it, I'm like, wow, that's a really well-designed watch. But is there ones, guys, I mean, Steve, I suppose I'll start with you. Is there one in your collection that will never leave because you just, when you pick it up, you're just reminded of why you bought it in the first place?
Well, I can't say that it'll never leave, because I'm a lot like you in the fact that I go through watches frequently. And to kind of answer Lee's response in a roundabout way about, you know, collecting, you know, the way that you collect. I mean, I feel that a collection is kind of a living and breathing thing. And so I'm constantly adding and removing pieces from that list. But this is one that I purchased about maybe 2 years ago. It's very hard to see. I apologize. It's a Breitling Genève chronograph. Basically, it was in the old stock condition when I got it. And, you know, I really love 1970s era chronographs with these sort of barrel-shaped cases. And, you know, this one, there's actually quite an interesting story behind it. I don't really wear gold watches that much. I mean, I feel like I really have to be in a mood to wear it. So I almost never wear this watch, but when I do wear it, I love wearing it because it just sparkles so much, and it just has such great presence. And, you know, I just think it's such a neat piece to own. You know, I don't know if I'll keep it forever, but, you know, I really do enjoy having it. I think everyone should have at least one gold watch in their collection, and especially a gold chronograph, because it's just such a statement piece. And so I just really enjoy, you know, putting this thing on, and it's got a Valjoux 7736 3-register movement, so it's a lot of fun to wear. Yeah, I really do like it, but I almost never wear it.
Yeah, Dave, have you got one that you always go back to, that you've had a while?
Yeah, I have a Datejust that is a blue dial Roman numeral Datejust with a fluted bezel. It's a 36 millimeter. And I got mine it was around 2000 that I bought it. So it's, you know, I've had it for 21 years now. And at the time I bought it, it was already a 10-year-old watch. It was a 1990 model. But remember, I'm buying a 36 millimeter Rolex in 2000 when the trend was buy big watches. Everybody wanted a big watch. And I'm like, no, I wanted a classic Datejust, and I wanted it because I saw a picture of Martin Luther King wore a gold one, exactly the same, with the Roman numerals, all gold band. I think Lyndon Johnson and John Kennedy wore the one like I have. They have either a blue dial or black dial Roman numeral version. And so I was looking for one of those, and I happened to cross the used one, and it was beautiful. I took it to my Rolex AD to have it checked out, and they were like, "This is amazing. How much are you paying for it?" And I'm like, "I'm not telling you." It was, you know, only a couple $1,000s at the time, and it was in spectacular shape. So the person really wanted to get rid of it, needed the money. You know, the economy was a little slow. So anyway, I got it. I'm very happy with it. It was my first luxury timepiece I ever bought. Before then, it was all Seikos and fashion watches. So that was my first real luxury timepiece, and I love it. I just wore it last week for a business meeting, and I just find that when I put it on, I'm like, yeah, I did really good buying this, and it was a kind of a celebration for me of a big business deal. So it's one of those things that has meaning to me and a memory for me. So that goes a long way for me, the nostalgia of collecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lee, is there one of yours that you've And I know you're down to 2 watches now, but
Yeah, I don't. I would say for me, it's not a specific watch, but a brand. Swatch. I actually
oh yeah,
just picked up a U.S. Olympics swatch on clearance from after the Olympic Games. I love Swatch. They remind me of my childhood. I remember being a little kid and my cool older cousins getting swatches for their birthdays, and it just they're not fancy, they're not expensive, but they just give me a lot of joy. And
It's hard to own just one though.
exactly, yeah, at the price point,
Yeah.
it's fun to just pick them up and just have them because they're fun.
Right.
yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I'd like to fantasize that throughout my youth, I had fond memories of people wearing Rolexes and stuff like that, and that's not the case. My mum always wore she's got a nicer watch now, but for years she only ever wore black Swatch with the white dial. She had multiple of them. I remember when I was at school in, God, this is going to date me now, but late 80s, and they had the pop swatches, and you could actually put them through your jumper, so it looked like you didn't have to wear them on, or they came on that elastic strap, but they kind of had a friction case, and you could actually pop them through your t-shirt, so it looked like you were wearing a watch there. So that was the huge trend at the time. And then for years I wore a Swatch Irony one at the first time the metal ones came out. This for years, this metal Swatch Irony. And then I remember fondly when they bought that, I don't know if they still make it, but that skin one, that crazy thin watch that's 1 or 2 millimeters, I think. But yeah, I think like childhood memories are more to do with the plastic swatches than anything posh like a Rolex or anything. Certainly my granddad or my granddad had a lot of mechanical watches, and I've got his LCD watch, but there was no kind of Rolexes or Omegas. I think I was the first in the family to buy a luxury watch, so to speak. But
Yeah,
Lee,
my
do you
family
have a
was the
picture
same.
of you from as a kid with like 6 of them and different colors on your arm?
yeah.
I'm positive my mom does. Yes, on some family vacation where I
Yes.
made her stop in at a Swatch shop in Miami or something on the way to the beach.
Yes.
Yeah,
That was
this,
the thing, right? Everybody wore multiples of them
Oh,
in different colors.
absolutely. Yeah, I remember one of my cousins had to have a different Swatch to match her outfit. Whatever she was wearing, purple, got to have the purple Swatch, green, got to have the green Swatch. Oh, yeah.
It's funny because the Swatch advert of the 80s should have been the opposite of the Patek one, where the Patek one is, you never actually own a Patek, you're just keeping it for the next. The Swatch one should have been, this watch will be lucky if it lasts 15 years. You are the only owner this watch will have, because the plastic is going to deteriorate. Obviously, the plastic technology has got so much better now, but I remember those early swatches. I mean, I keep flirting with trying to track down the original Keith Haring ones, the graffiti artist ones, but you cannot find them in a decent condition for. They're all, because they're irreparable. They're unrepairable, aren't they? Because they were built backwards. They're glued together, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I had one that the crystal cracked, a Swatch, and I did. I mean, I work on watches a lot, and I could not, for the life of me, get that thing to go back together correctly. And because you have to get the crystal off to get at any of the movement or anything, because you can't take the movement out from the backside. So yeah, it was a mess. I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing with this particular plastic watch, because that thing was mangled by the time I tried to get it apart.
Yeah, I had a pager one, a Swatch pager watch. Swatch
Ooh,
the Beat, it was
fancy.
called. Well, I found it a couple of years. I still had it in my parents' loft. I found it, and I tried to pull out the battery tray, because it took that CR2023, a massive. My Breitling takes that for an example, and I just pulled the thing, and the whole thing just fell to bits. It was
Too bad.
Yeah, I think even when I had it, it was. It had cracked a little bit, but that thing, it only ever works for a set period when the British Telecom at the time let that they opened up the bandwidth and gave it a phone number. But when that thing went off, the alarm was unbelievable. But I thought I was it was James Bond. I had a watch with a pager on it, and then you had all the pager codes like boobs and stuff you could send to people.
Oh yeah.
Or then if you had the one on the belt as well.
Oh yeah, I had the belt pager. I remember those days.
Yes.
Yeah, and you had to run to a phone or whatever.
Well, if you were really cool, you had the light up belt pager. That was
Oh yeah,
that was fancy.
Oh, I let Chris, somebody's asked where Chris is, and Chris, unfortunately, he couldn't make it today. He's away with his wife, but he talks about that, how special he felt with the one with the crazy lights on it. Yeah, because it was crazy for us, because I remember we had the pagers, and then we went into a whole phase in the UK of the Nokia phones, where Nokia was bringing a new phone out every couple of weeks. They were constantly evolving, and then whenever I would visit America before I moved here, everyone seemed to have one generic clamshell phone. It seemed like the Nokia craze hadn't quite hit. This was sort of late 90s, early 2000s. Everyone just had one, and they would all speak to it like a Star Trek telecom light in front of their face.
The Motorola brick.
Yeah, Todd is here. So Todd, thanks for joining us.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was here, and then we had a small emergency, and I had to bug out, and then I'm back.
Oh, hopefully the fire was put out, was it? Or hopefully it wasn't an emergency of flooding or something.
No alarms were called, so we're in good shape.
Todd, you missed the wristwatch check, so you're gonna have to do it now. What are you wearing?
Well, and I think your guests would appreciate this.
Seiko.
Yeah, it's
there we go.
Pogue.
It's a true Pogue. It's
Nice.
actually the same exact model that Colonel Pogue wore on the Skylab mission. So I've been very fortunate to find this one and have it restored.
Yeah, it looks like the dial and the rehole and everything are all in beautiful color, which is rare because usually the rehole is very faded.
Exactly. And so sometimes you used to be able to find them, new old stock, and they're almost impossible to find now. There's a little bit of a halo around the subdial, which is normal. These gold dials kind of do this, but this is the 6139 6005 from September of 1971, which is the same month and a year that the Colonel's was.
So it's on the same batch, basically.
It's on the same batch, and it's just a fortunate piece. I hunt these. I'm a hunter. Some people do big game, some people do deer. Steve is involved with this a little bit too, because he and I send stuff. I've bought some stuff from him, but it's fun to go and you search the world for these things, and you find them, and then you find rare models, or you find parts ones. You could put something together.
Yeah, my Bond digital watch that I'm looking at across the room right now was like that. I found a beautiful case and band, and it had everything in it. When I got it, the module was working, but just the LCD was just gone.
Yeah, they're gone. Usually they're hard to find working.
So I found a guy in Greece who had just bought out an old Seiko store, and I bought his LCDs that he had left for this model, and I bought two of them. That was all that was left, new old stock, and sure enough, one of them dropped on and fired right up. I was so happy.
That's fantastic. That's a great watch.
It's a very rare watch too.
It is a very rare watch working.
Yeah,
it's a phenomenon, isn't it? Like in a world where everything is so easy to buy online now, it seems like as watch collectors we seek out that pain of the pain of not being able, if there's something we can't find, we lust after it more. Like, no, I need the pain of really searching for something. And then Todd, the other question we had, which was on the Facebook group, was: is there a watch that you own that you will never get rid of because you forget how much you like it, and then you'll go back to it like weeks or months later, and you're like, oh, I really actually like that watch. Like, why don't I wear it more?
Oh. So what were the other select? I have some of my watches in my case in front of me. Hold on here.
Well, I started off with the turtle, and then I got top trumped by everybody from then onwards.
Yeah, I think I put in the Facebook group my Vostok, which I didn't bring down with me. That's one, because it kind of gets overwhelmed with all the other things that you have. Like Dave probably doesn't know, I have about 35 versions of these Seiko speed timers, and so I rotate through them in like this, try to get them in, not obviously every month, but I try to get them in close to that. So, and then I have my other Swiss watches and stuff like that too. So the Vostok sometimes sits there, and then I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's such a cool watch. And so, I put it on, and it's fun to wear. It's modded and that sort of thing. But
this is the one I was.
Oh, look at that.
Oh yeah.
Seiko Quartz, you've got.
Wow.
Oh, you've got the.
So cool.
Oh, that is cool. And you've got it in the box, and you've got the ticker tape thing that it punched out in the movie.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
That's
in the
cool.
Bond film, it said 007 to report HQ.
Oh, wow.
So cool.
That
Was that a
is.
promotional item then they included in the box?
No, I had it made.
Oh,
That is
Sticker tape. How hard is that to make? Come
cool.
on.
No, that looks really good. I thought it might be like a promotional thing they included with the watch
I
at the
thought so
time,
too.
to shift
makes
more.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, you can. It's just a ticker tape.
That is neat.
Yeah. So
That
yeah,
is
it was
so
a
neat.
fun one to put back together.
Yeah, Chris and I made a comment on the normal show, the Casual Watch Talk show, the other day about a Casio F100, I think, that they'd reissued, and I need to apologize to everyone because I said I would like this. I said I don't like it, but I'd like it more if it was tied to a movie, and everyone's like, "Yeah, dude, it was in Aliens." Right, it was.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
suddenly now I like it, but you just totally reminded me of it, Dave, because I made a comment like, "Oh, I wish it was like a prop watch," and everyone's like, "Yeah,
Yes,
it was in Aliens."
Yeah.
I've perjured myself. I've apologized to the masses. We've only got a couple of minutes here left, but another story that Chris and I covered that I think I would love to get your guys' opinions on is the one about Panerai, where they had that limited edition watch that you could only get if you went on this extreme sports experience with them. You got hand selected, you got the watch, and then they took you on this like rock climbing adventure. And apparently they've done a couple. Now, as watch collectors, we love the idea of a watch that has a special meaning to it, or perhaps that was involved in. Todd, prime example, your Pogue there was involved in a historically significant event. What do you think of Panerai almost forcing that experience? Like they realize you like to have an experience, so they're forcing not forcing it. You selected, but they're tying the experience to the watch. It's not something that you've experienced alongside the watch. What do you guys think of that? Think it's a good idea, or?
I always say that a collectible is something that was meant to be a utilitarian item that becomes desirable for some reason, cultural significance, or tied to a historic event, or it just nostalgia brings it about as being collectible. Those items that are released as collectibles rarely ever are actually collectible.
Yeah, I was watching something on the Beanie Babies phenomenon and how it all just completely tanked. Like everyone was crazy about it. But the Panerai question, I mean, Steve, have you got
Well, it's funny because when you mentioned that, I immediately thought of the Martin Baker limited edition, I guess, that Bremont has. And I think that's a really cool thing, so for everyone who doesn't know, or for those of you that do, if you are in a Martin Baker ejection seat, they make ejection seats for aircraft, and you get to use it, you actually eject from the plane, Bremont will give you one of these watches. So that's a watch directly tied to an experience, but not necessarily you wearing the watch at that particular time. And I think that's really neat, because they don't sell this watch to the general public. It's something you can only get through this experience. I do see what you're saying about the Panerai. I think it's very contrived, and obviously it sounds like a publicity stunt. I think if you really want the watch and you want to go through the experience, then by all means. I mean, BMW does the same thing where you can purchase a car in Germany and drive it in Europe for a while and then send it back to the US. So I can kind of understand that a little bit, but it does seem a little contrived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels to me almost like you're paying for this trip, and they kind of throw in a watch as like your gift on the way out. I guess for me, it'd be like the equivalent of like going up Mount Everest, and then when you get done, they hand you a Rolex Explorer. Yeah. It doesn't really feel special to me. It feels contrived, like you were saying. It feels like the experience is made so that they can give you this prize instead of letting the experience naturally happen.
Yeah, that was my view on it as well, actually. I don't know, Todd, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I was thinking Steve's point too. I was thinking, like, my uncle bought a new Corvette, and you get to take it out on the proving ground, and I think Chevrolet has it somewhere in Kentucky. I'm trying to remember where it is. You pick it up there.
Bowling Green.
Bowling Green. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, Bowling Green. You get to do this, and they do this whole tour thing with it, and it's a pretty cool experience. But the experience was the car was part of the experience. Obviously, it's the nature of the experience. I think, to your point, I think it's a little contrived. They're trying a little too hard, I think, with this, although evidently they seem to be successful, at least in terms of selling these very expensive vacations that you get a watch out of when you're done. But yeah, I'm kind of the same thought process, I think, as you guys.
Yeah, Dave, you similar? You think along the same lines?
Yeah, I just think it's not really a collectible watch because it's purposely built to be a collectible, and those things never are collectible. I think the experience, if you love doing those things and you get a watch out of it, that's cool, and that watch will be a great memory for you of the event. But does that make the watch any more valuable? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, it makes it more. But the one, I think I read the one that they did do, which I thought was in keeping, was they did a training experience with the Marine Militare, the Italian Navy, which is kind of in fitting with what they want. Well, let's just finish up with a couple of questions here. So Bobby's got a very important question here. He's saying Ridley's Aliens or Alien or James Cameron's Aliens.
Ooh, Ridley. Yeah.
I think Alien is a better movie, but I enjoy Aliens more.
I enjoy Aliens. When she's in that mech at the end, I mean, that's just, that's cinematic gold. That, yeah. And I'd love one of those Seikos, actually, the Ripley Seiko, but they're great. It's funny because TGV at the time was talking up that watch, wasn't he? And they were still available for $300 or something, and now they're well over $1,000. Let's see if we've got any other questions. Yeah, somebody's saying that rich people get bored, so Panerai's, dialing into that.
Yeah, they're not wrong.
Here you are. So, not so obvious watches. Is it possible to sell a new watch in 2021 with a story that isn't contrived or a history or backstory? That's an interesting one.
I think you're right.
It is.
Anybody want to jump on that one?
No, I mean, that's tough because, like, for me as a micro brand owner, if you don't have a story, or if you're not connecting it to a movie, or you're not connecting it, or you're not selling a straight up homage or homage, or you're not trying to do a story of some sort, whether it's a personal story or something, it is hard to get somebody to buy something that there's no story behind. There's no reason to buy it. There's so many other very similar product out there. You need a reason to buy it. And for me, watch collecting and for most people, I believe collecting in general is about that feeling of nostalgia that you get from collecting. And if you have a story that elicits a sense of nostalgia from somebody, it really helps with that.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. Contrivance versus nostalgia. One of them feels very cynical. One of them feels very natural.
Yeah, I totally agree. I got somebody, I won't say who it is, but somebody messaged me asking me to do a review this week, and the story was ridiculous. I just replied back, I'm not. It was like a generic fashion watch. They made this thing about how it had unique styling and all of that, and it was like, no, this is an Alibaba watch. Just own that fact.
Yeah,
it
you're
was
not disrupting the industry.
Right.
Exactly. You're not disrupting the industry. It wasn't two friends in a bar who came up with this idea. I won't name and shame them, but the backstory was it was ridiculous, honestly. It was like, no, nobody's going to believe that.
Right. Right. Well, I was going to show this one because, we all know, we all know that some manufacturer of this, wants to remind us that it went to the moon a lot. And so, in fact, as we all well know, on the back of it, which you can't see here, this is the Hesalite. So it does say, first watch worn on the moon. This is the last of the 1861s from 2020. I was able to get a good deal on it. But the point is that what really makes this so appealing, it's a great watch, but the technology is something that's from the 60s. It's a cam-driven chronograph. When I start it, you get that little shift, quickie little shift in the second hand, the chrono second hand, because of the way the cam levers operate, where actually the Seiko, you don't, because it's a vertical clutch system. So it's actually a little bit, I guess it's what the Lamagna 321 was before they made it a little bit, less fragile and made it into the 861 before this. But the story this tells, right, is awesome. I have like a little model Saturn rocket over here. I've got, I've got space books over here. And so just like, wow, this is the same model, more or less, right? Going to the moon. That means something, I guess, to us in some way, to Dave's point, right?
I totally agree. And one day I'll have to do a video on this, but I mentioned it in that top 10 things about this, the Speedmaster you may not know, but Omega have almost obscured Armstrong from any of the marketing, even though I know Buzz was the first to wear it on the moon, but Armstrong's story is as powerful. The timer broke, so he left his. Like, if his Speedmaster hadn't been left behind, they might have been left on the moon forever because they needed to time it properly. So, if anything, they should be having any. Perhaps it's also because thankfully Buzz Aldrin's still alive, so he can obviously attend events and things like that. But it's funny how he's kind of Armstrong is kind of missed from a lot of the Speedmaster marketing, even though arguably his is the stronger story to do with the Speedmaster. But
and what about the what's his name, the commander that was in the control module, orbiting? Yeah. He was the one actually timing the intercept. Otherwise, they would have just bounced off and crashed back into the moon. And I'm pretty sure he used the Speedmaster for some of those maneuvers.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That must be crazy, wouldn't it? Because I guess, even though the Speedmaster had been through all that rigorous testing, still, when they took it to space, they probably had, a slit, not a full 100% confidence that the watches would work as they were supposed to, because. But I know they weren't the first into space, but it was when they went on the moon.
Still putting a lot of faith in your technology.
Exactly. Well, guys, that was really interesting. We're at the hour now. Thank you for everyone that joined in. And any last words from anyone before I cut anyone off?
No? Sam, I just wanted to mention to the group for all of the Detroit Mint watches that we've been kind of talking about, or I show every once in a while. I've added a 20% discount for the Casual Watch Review channel and the followers. If anyone wants to check out the Detroit Mint watches and wants to grab one, there's type in the word casual at checkout in your coupon code and you get 20% off any watch in the store.
Well, thanks for doing that, Dave. Yeah, I'll include that link in the description. Cool. Well, thanks everyone. We're going to end the live stream now. Thank you all for joining in, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Hi
you.
guys.
Bye bye.
Thank you.